The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Guess what I'm going to talk about today? Sisters and brothers, I actually want to raise a pretty serious question. One of the most serious questions, perhaps, that we have to ask ourselves as a faith community. Namely, the question of what it is that lies at the centre of our faith. In the first place, and this is my first point, I want to demonstrate to all of you why I, Sally Andrews, am an expert in self-deception. Now, my hero, my absent hero, Robin Goodwin, did touch upon last week a number of intriguing points as to how we are virtually wired to deceive ourselves and to get Jesus wrong. And so, to borrow a phrase from Robin, the second point of my sermon is going to be addressing another adventure in missing the point. Namely, a situation where sometimes we can allow our distinctiveness as radical Christians to distract ourselves from living out the true message of the gospel. And thirdly, I'm going to attempt to shed some light on how we can find a way out of this cycle of self-serving self-deception. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, Sally, in what way are you an expert or even faintly qualified to lecture us on the topic of self-deception in the church? To which I would answer, Andy, I am a 20-year-old, middle-class, undergraduate arts student, and you may hereafter refer to me as the king, queen, and poet laureate of self-deception. Let me prove my point further with an amusing anecdote. This Tuesday past, I rocked up to the first of the 2014 Christian Students Uniting Bible studies in our new chaplaincy offices with a bunch of relative strangers that we had met at O Week. And of course it came to that inevitable point of the Bible study where Reverend Dr. John Hurt has to explain hermeneutics. And Rev was droning on about the fact that there is nothing in the text of Mark 1:1 that is placed there by accident, that every single word was specifically chosen to communicate something very important about the significance of the new gospel of Jesus or Caesar or something. Anyway, hermeneutics, Rev was saying, is a reading strategy that we are constantly applying to the world around us. I was then asked to stand up in front of the group, whereupon Rev proceeds to apply a hermeneutical lens to the shirt I was wearing, which, in Rev's defence, was a t-shirt emblazoned with the face of T.S. Eliot, the great modernist poet. Now, I put the shirt on that morning without putting a whole lot of thought into what the reaction of Bible study was going to be. But nevertheless, after examining the context and the content of this outfit, Rev concluded that I had, however subconsciously, made the decision to present myself as a self-referential, ironic, intellectual hipster type. And Miranda Evans further added that I was probably just trying to pick up on boys with poetry majors. Rest assured, sisters and brothers, I will never again wear a literary-themed t-shirt to Bible study. But nevertheless, Rev's question, Rev's challenge, it did raise a number of uncomfortable questions for me. Foremost being, how do I present myself as a Christian? And how are further acts of self-deception affecting my public and private Christianity? Keep these questions in mind as you watch this next YouTube.
Very well. They're coming. Now we'll see how these Russians deal with a crack SS division.
Hans?
Have courage, my friend.
Yeah, Hans, I've just noticed something.
These communists are all cowards.
Have you looked at our caps recently?
Our caps?
The badges on our caps. Have you looked at them?
What? No. A bit?
They've got skulls on them. Have you noticed that our caps have actually got little pictures of skulls on them?
I don't,
Hans, are we the baddies?
Let's see. We should be able to hold them at this point here, at least for a few hours.
And why skulls, though?
What?
Why skulls?
Well, maybe they're the skulls of our enemies.
Maybe. But is that how it comes across? I mean, it doesn't say next to the skull, yeah, we killed him, but trust us, this guy was horrid.
Well, no, but...
I mean, what do skulls make you think of? Death, cannibals, beheading, pirates.
Pirates are fun!
I didn't say we weren't fun, but fun or not, pirates are still the baddies. I just can't think of anything good about a skull.
What about pure Aryan skull shape?
Even that is more usually depicted with the skin still on. Whereas the Allies...
Oh, you haven't been listening to Allied propaganda. Of course they're going to say we're the bad guys.
But they didn't get to design our uniforms. And their symbols are all, quite nice. Stars, stripes, lions, sickles.
What's so good about a sickle?
Well, nothing. And obviously, if there's one thing we've learned in the last 1,000 miles of retreat, is that Russian agriculture is in dire need of mechanization.
Tell me about it.
But you've got to say, it's better than a skull. I mean, I really can't think of anything worse as a symbol than a skull.
A rat's anus?
Yeah, and if we were fighting an army marching under the banner of a rat's anus, I'd probably be a lot less worried, Hans.
Okay. So...
Mark ye the words of the self-aware Nazi. Are we the baddies? If we broach the subject of self-deception, that is ultimately what we are asking ourselves. Are we the baddies? In Jeremiah 17, we hear that the heart is devious above all else. It is perverse. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, test the mind and search the heart to give to all according to their ways, according to the fruit of their doings. For me, sisters and brothers, one of my greatest adventures in missing the point is when I allow my image of distinctiveness, or the image of this church, as a body that is politically engaged, socially conscious, forward-looking, sophisticated, to assume position as the centre of my faith. In other words, letting our own distinctiveness become the centre of what we're on about in church. Now, C.S. Lewis wrote about this phenomenon in the Screwtape Letters, which I urge you all to read if you haven't done so already. In it, the character Screwtape, who is a senior devil advising his young nephew on the best ways essentially to misdirect Christians, he directly addresses this problem. Now, Lewis is writing these letters in 1941, relatively early days of World War II, when the issues of compulsory military service, drafting, and conscientious objection were some of the foremost points of political contention in Great Britain. And Screwtape is talking about how these political concerns can be used to misguide young Christians. Let him begin by treating the patriotism or pacifism as a part of his religion. Then let him, under the influence of partisan spirit, come to regard it as the most important part. Then quietly and gradually nurse him onto the stage at which his religion becomes merely part of the cause, in which Christianity is valued chiefly because of the excellent arguments it produces in favour of the British war effort or pacifism. Did you get it? When I read this passage, it got me. Screwtape goes on to say that if they must be Christians, let them at least be Christians with a difference. What Lewis is trying to tell us is that sometimes social justice, politics, pacifism, or if you will, the never-ending pursuit of the latest fashionable cause to rally behind, can cause many Christians to miss the point. Are we missing the point? Are we the baddies? You know, I'm thinking here of the pride I have in CSU on campus. To my mind, we are the Christians with a difference at the University of Sydney. That is largely how we sell ourselves. And I think this attitude can be extrapolated to how I feel in presenting myself as a member of the broader Uniting Church. Now, recently I've just come back from a trip across the United States as a delegate with UN Youth Australia. And in my travels across America, in my socialising, I found it very easy when I was mixing with strangers, atheists, people from other religions, the law school or Model United Nations crowd, John Stewart, all these witty, urbane lefties. I found it very easy to say, yeah, I'm a member of the Uniting Church of Australia, and to prattle on about what makes us distinctive, what makes us different to those other Christians. But surely something has gone a bit awry. Surely I am far from being the self-aware Nazi. When I can harp on and on about all the Uniting Church, inclusiveness, political engagement, equality jargon, but I find it near impossible to simply come out and say, I am a Christian. I am a follower of Jesus Christ, and to hang that in the air before them with no caveats, distinctions, clarifications attached. This is regrettable. We should be able to simply say, I am a Christian, and have no qualms in leaving it there. But part of the reason that we have this tendency to present ourselves as Christians with a difference is because a lot of the time the church, as it's represented in the public eye, only gets media attention focused on the extremities of views. We are stuck in a difficult place. We are stuck between wildly varying different polarities of the church, between liberals and fundamentalists. And this makes it really hard for us to say only, I am a Christian. We want people to know that we are confessional. We are treading on the heart of orthodox mainline theology. But even the New Testament Christians, even the early church, even they didn't just say, I am a Christian, and leave it at that. In fact, Paul says that at the centre of his gospel, at the centre of the gospel is this, that I have decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. That's the distinctiveness of the Christian message. If you pledge allegiance to a Christ crucified in a room full of fundamentalists or liberals, That will mark you out as a Christian with a difference. If we proclaim Christ crucified, we do not follow a triumphalist Christ, a warlike Christ, a homophobic Christ, or an apolitical Christ. This is no conquering, victorious, Jesus is my boyfriend theology. The great German theologian, one of the great saints of the modern church, Jürgen Moltmann, highlights this distinction when he asks, what does it mean to recall the God who was crucified in a society whose official creed is optimism and which is knee-deep in blood? Christ crucified is a central fact of the New Testament, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. And perhaps, sisters and brothers, we need no more distinctiveness than that. Now, I'm not going to name names, but earlier in this week, in conversation with certain prominent members of the congregation, I was gently directed to do a bit more reading of this German theologian, Jürgen Moltmann. And as I stumbled through his frankly massive tome, The Crucified God, I read of some contention surrounding the book of Revelations and how certain interpretations give great weight to the appearance of the Lion of Judah, stressing that this triumphalist figure is the centre, the focal point of Revelations. That's what everyone expects. But Moltmann says, and in doing so he's speaking for the majority of Orthodox mainline theologians, Moltmann says, it is the Lamb, the crucified Lamb. In Revelations 5:6, the Lamb standing as if it had been slaughtered, and that this is what lies at the heart of Christianity. Contrary to popular belief, I don't have all the answers. In the first place, in declaring myself as an expert in self-deception, however true that may be, I'm essentially using me as a cipher, an illustration. After all, it's not necessarily all about me. I mean, not all the time. The bottom line is, sisters and brothers, we are all experts at deceiving ourselves. Secondly, we have learnt that our own distinctiveness, our own pride in being Christians with a difference, can often become a distraction. We can become Pharisees, trapped in our own righteousness, blinded by self-congratulatory theology, where our very distinctiveness becomes something that obstructs us from reaching intimacy of relationship with God. And thirdly, in trying to identify a potential way out of this, I fear I may have contradicted myself. And you'll have to forgive me because it's only happened once or twice in my life. But I've done so in heralding the fact that by living out the emphasis of the New Testament, we find that there actually is a Christian distinctiveness. And we find it in taking up the theology of the cross. In worship of Christ crucified, how can we care not for the least of these, for the broken ones? And how can we say that the gospel is apolitical? Though we will be continually struggling with issues of self-deception, we must let nothing, not our pride, not our distinctiveness, not our ideology, distract us from identifying ourselves as followers of Christ crucified, the Lamb that was slain, the crucified and risen one. And so we are bound to God's word.
And God's word.